I can think of an example of like Tourette's going away. Have you ever heard of Casper Lee, the YouTuber? He was pretty popular in like 2015 when like Zoella was famous and Joe Sugg.
I'll look him up. Uh, Casper
It's
Lee.
probably not your era, but I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I don't know. It's hard to tell.
He did a video a good few years ago, probably like almost 10 years ago now, where he spoke about his life with Tourette's
Yeah.
because when he was younger, he had like quite mild tics and maybe not Tourette's because we talked about this on the last podcast, the difference between the tics and the syndrome. But he
Spectrum.
spoke about his life with it, and then he said as he just grew up, it kind of just went away.
Have you found that yours is less now than it was since last time we spoke, for example?
No, I'd say it stayed the same.
Yeah.
There are periods, where I'll have like a tic for a few weeks where it'll be really bad, but then sometimes it'll be alright. Like when I started the second year of college, obviously I've been getting back into a routine because this summer holidays I've just been kind of lounging around and stuff. So the fact that I had to wake up at like 7:30 and not 10 in the morning and get the tram to college and all that sort of stuff, that made my tics bad because I wasn't used to it. But as I've got back into the routine with college, they've died down.
I'd say it's kind of died down, if anything, from the start of this conversation to now. There's like a massive reduction in the amount of the tics that you have now than compared to like an hour ago, which is unusual. And I didn't know if that was like a, I don't know if it's when you're just speaking to somebody for the first time until you acclimatize yourself to that conversation or something. I don't know if like how that works, but
yeah, I think when I'm concentrating on something, it definitely helps.
Yeah.
I kind of notice my tics less, and I'm focusing more on what I'm actually doing.
Do you reckon you could like act in it? Like, let's say if we were making a film and you were playing someone that doesn't have Tourette's, right? And you don't have any tics or anything, we could get enough takes where it's like, we cut away as soon as there's a tic, and then we do a solid take of the thing until you don't have it anymore. Like, and you cut all of the bits out. Like the way you just answered that there, I would use that take, and then I'll cut to something else, and then it's like there's enough time between them that it's like it would be exhausting, but it would be an interesting experiment to see if you could completely hide it in a controlled way, like just by using like video takes or something. You know? I don't know if that's like a really weird thing to say. I just thought about it now. It's like it would be an experiment, to try and hide it somehow.
It would be possible. But I can't think of any actors with Tourette's.
That would be a really hard job, I think, if you had any lack of control over your facial expressions.
Yeah. I think if you search it up... Melanie Sykes. She's, I don't know if you know who she is.
I've heard the name. I will probably know.
Basically, last year... I think it was last year, or it might have been the start of this year. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Melanie Sykes self-diagnosed herself with Tourette syndrome last year. And as someone who has an official diagnosis and actually struggles with something like that, I think a lot of people who self-diagnose, it's very disrespectful. I think they kind of want the title of, oh, I have Tourette's.
Why would you not just get a proper diagnosis then? I mean, if you think you have it, then why wouldn't you get that checked?
Well, this is the thing. It's very hard to get a diagnosis now. My brother it's very evident he has Tourette's. He started ticking and like for the last year or so, but there's no neurologist for people with, kids in the Northwest. So the waiting list for a diagnosis for something like Tourette's, autism, ADHD is just years long.
Right.
And it's either that or you go private and pay $5,000 for one. But, we can't afford $5,000 for some rich doctor to say, oh yeah, he's got Tourette's.
Yeah. So what's that? The connection there? Do you think is it like a genetic thing? There must be some.
Yeah, it is hereditary. My dad has it.
Oh, really? Well, there you go. Okay. I never I spoke to him when he was there last time we did the podcast. I would never have noticed, although I didn't have enough of an interaction with him, I guess. But
Yeah.
what does he have? Is it the tics that he has, or is it?
Yeah, he's got tics, and it's clear, he's got the kind of comorbidities that come along with the syndrome. But I think he says sometimes, I talk to him about it. He says sometimes he has bad tics, but I think for him, they seem kind of a lot calmer.
Yeah.
But that might be something, where as you get older, it might change.
I was thinking that, yeah, because he's obviously he's older. You said your brother, is he much younger than you?
Yeah, my brother's 14.
Okay, so he's got more obvious tics than you, would you say? And now yours are less obvious, and then your dad's are much less obvious.
Yeah, I think my brother, he's grown up into a kind of teenager. For him, his tics are very bad at the moment. For me, they're still bad, but less so compared to when I was starting off with Tourette's.
So it just comes out at a certain point where you start ticking.
Yeah, I think I'd say so.
Was it about the same? Like he's 14 now. When did he start?
Probably I'd say when he was 12.
Yeah. Were you about the same when you were about 12?
No. For me, it was probably about 6 or 7 years old.
Right. Okay.
I was diagnosed on my 8th birthday, but I showed very obvious signs then. But if you want to get a diagnosis, basically, you have to be ticking, or you have to show signs of Tourette's for at least a year, so a doctor can then, perform a diagnosis.
I don't know, like when you said you have to be ticking for a year, is that something you sort of like, do you have to document it to prove it to a doctor, or is it just like they go by what you would never just lie about it kind of thing?
I think there has to be forms of documentation. Like, I think when my mum was going through that process with me when I was younger, there were times where I'd have bad tics and she'd record it, so if the doctor ever needed to know anything, she could show them the video and be like, yeah, this is what's happening.
Yeah. I suppose it's probably more common now to document it because you don't have to be like, right, let's get the film loaded into the camera or whatever. It's just literally you just get your phone and just ready at an instant. So I reckon there'd be more people getting diagnosed with it because it's just, I guess you could also send it easier as well. You could send it to a doctor on WhatsApp or something.
Like post the tape in or whatever.
Not like you've been framed, It's something, I think it's like, when someone has something, like for example, it's like, you would count it as a disability, right? It's a thing that you have to live. It's a condition. We'll say it's a condition rather than...
Well, no, it is a disability if you look on like...
Yeah, because it affects your driving and stuff, or your... Like, it... But the thing is, you think like, he's got Tourette's. We'll not talk about it. We'll kind of skirt over it or whatever. But like, it always comes up because, in a way, does it make you feel more comfortable knowing that you've brought it out into the open? We're both acknowledging it. We both know what it is, and it's like, or is it like I don't know? Is it making it really awkward if somebody's like never acknowledges it and you never talk about it, and they just like almost can't look at you because of it or something? That's maybe the worst way to deal with it.
I always bring it up. I like, if I'm ever making a face or something, I always say, look, I have Tourette's. I'm not being weird or anything. Like, my boyfriend, our first date, before I went on a date with him, I told him, I was like, look, I've got Tourette's, so when we meet in person, I'm not being weird.
Yeah.
Can't help it.
But I feel like most people, I mean, like, when you watch, like, The Undateables, is a good example. There'll always be someone on The Undateables, and it's like, there's nothing apart from the fact that they have Tourette's. I don't think that Tourette's is an off-putting thing for partners. I don't know, like...
Yeah.
Like how... It's something that you immediately get accustomed to, and then it's just immediately not a big... So it's never impacted you dating-wise or anything like that in your life?
No.
I don't think it ever will. I think it's kind of it's the most easy thing to just get used to immediately. As soon as you acknowledge it, it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's like saying
Yeah, well, my boyfriend, he, he's considerate. He's like, oh, how are you feeling? Your tick's all right today, kind of thing.
okay, so you met. I mean, that could be a whole other topic of conversation. How you two met, for example.
It was online. It's this app called Wiz. It's not a dating app, but it's for like teenagers and kind of young adults.
I was thinking, like, neither of you. I'm assuming you couldn't be on a dating thing until you're 18, right?
Yeah, a lot of them 18 only.
So you met like that way, and then did it come up on the chat that you had? Like, did you just tell him straight away, or?
Yeah, well, we met on this app. We had a brief conversation through the app, and then he was like, "Oh, what's your Snapchat and socials and number and everything?"
Yeah.
And we spoke for a few days. We'd call, we'd send messages and everything. And then he was like, "Look, I'll cut the bullshit. When do you want to meet?" And I was like, "Whenever you want," because that was my biggest fear of like talking to someone for ages and then eventually saying, "Oh, like, when do you want to meet?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm not ready yet."
Yeah.
But he was completely on the same page as me. He wanted to get to know me in person, not over online.
Yeah, it's a trap in it. Like, you watch that show. What's it called? Catfish. And like, that's, if someone doesn't want to meet, there's got to be something wrong. What are they hiding? It's good that you just got it. I mean, I met my girlfriend online, and it wasn't like we didn't want to wait that long before we met. And I think that's like, you don't want to seem pushy, but it's like, this is only a means to meet. It's not how I want to conduct our entire relationship. I just want to physically meet you in person, kind of thing.
Well, I think you get to know someone better in person because you focus on stuff like body language and how they present themselves. Because if you're talking to someone through a screen, you're not going to get an idea of who they actually are.
And then when you met, he already knew that you had Tourette's.
Yeah, it wasn't a problem. I think if you have a problem with something like that, that's if someone who you were interested in kind of had a problem with that, that's their problem, But me and my boyfriend, we just get along so well, There wasn't any need to like argue or anything like that.
Yeah. How long have you been together?
It's a month on Tuesday.
Things are going, I mean, it's early days, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I couldn't do long distance and get on the train every week to see someone. It's because that gets expensive after a while.
It's also, and it's like that's why I'm living here, to be honest with you, because I was doing kind of a long distance thing, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just gonna have to physically move house, and that's what we ended up doing. But even when I was like, before I was driving, like when I was about 17, I had a girlfriend who I had to get like 2 buses and a train to get to her, and she didn't drive either. So it was like, it was always a nightmare. We kind of broke up because it was just too much of an arse on to get to her. And then it's weird how you would think like you can't put a distance on the heart or whatever, but it's like you can really, because it's just not worth the effort.
Yeah, well, like I've not seen him for a week or two because he's on holiday, and you start to miss someone. Like, if you're doing long distance, it's like, it's just, no shade to anyone watching who's doing long distance, but
yeah,
it's a bit weird. I just couldn't do it myself.
It's like, even like she goes away to work, like she'll go away for like a week. I don't know if you watched the TikToks when my dog's shit all over the house recently when I was away, but like it does put a strain on us because like we don't want to do long distance. So when she goes to work for a week, it's kind of a nightmare. It goes back to being long distance again, phone calls and like planning like conversations and stuff. It's not for me. It's never good. I guess people don't deliberately do long distance. It's just sometimes you have to. But like, you found someone that you can see regularly. I found someone that was long distance, just simply moved in. Like, I don't know how people do it for like years. I guess they're just afraid to meet each other on that Catfish program.
Yeah, I think what I really can't get my head around is people who do these long distance relationships and say they'll be in a I say relationship for like 2 years, and they finally meet each other for the first time.
Yeah.
And usually it's not that awkward because usually they get along so well, kind of over call or whatever. But just not something I understand really.
Well, it's like, I think also there's there's no, I don't know, there's no polite way to put it, but like if you think you fancy someone after seeing a picture of them, you're going to know for sure when you physically see them in person. And the longer you delay that, the longer, like, it could have been a disaster when you two met, the first time, based on just how your camera picks you up versus how the human eye picks you up or something. I think get that bit out of the way as early as possible, really, in any relationship. But I don't think Catfish is a good example of good relationships anyway, You wouldn't be on that program if things were going well.